The faint sunlight that filtered through the kitchen window cast a pale yellow glow over the room. It was a Monday morning, and my wife Bea and I were sitting at the kitchen table, having finished our breakfast. I was sipping on my steaming cup of coffee, contentedly reading the morning paper. Suddenly, Bea's voice cut through the peaceful silence. "Would you put the paper down, Rob? I have to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow in surprise as I set the paper down on the table. "What is it, Bea?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "I'm leaving you, Rob. I want a divorce." For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but then it all made sense. The past year had been strained for us, full of arguments and unspoken grievances. "Is that all?" I asked nonchalantly, picking the paper back up and flipping to the sports section. Bea's face turned red with anger and frustration. "I'm serious, Rob." Ignoring her, I continued to read about last night's game. "Damn it, Rob, put that fucking paper down and talk to me!" My eyes flicked up to meet hers, before returning to the newspaper. "Why bother? There's nothing left to say except goodbye. You haven't been much of a wife for over a year now anyway, so go." And with that, I let my newspaper shield me from any further conversation. I gently set the paper down on the kitchen table, my hands trembling with anger. Without even looking at Beatrice, I grumbled, "Give me just a second." I pushed myself up from the table and made my way to the home office, my steps heavy with frustration. I reached for the pen and pad of paper that sat atop my cluttered desk, pulling out an envelope from one of the drawers. Returning to the kitchen, I plopped back into my chair and began furiously scribbling on the top sheet of paper. "Tom, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank God she is gone." As I started to slide the note into the envelope, a mischievous idea struck me. Reaching into my wallet, I grabbed one of the lottery tickets I had bought the night before and slipped it inside as well, adding to my note. I wrote, "Maybe if you get lucky and win, it will be enough to keep the cheating horse satisfied with you, and she won't go out and cheat again. Good luck, dude. You are going to need it." Satisfied with my revenge plan, I signed off with a very thankful Rob. With purposeful folds, I tucked the page into its sleeve and sealed the envelope shut. Handing it over to Beatrice with a cold glare, I instructed her, "When you see him, give him this." She took it hesitantly, her face contorting in shock. "You know," she stammered. "Just because you think I'm clueless doesn't make it so," I retorted. "On second thought," I said as I snatched the envelope back from her grasp, "I'll mail it to him myself. I don't trust you not to open it up, read it, and then throw it away like everything else in our marriage." The final words dripped with bitterness. "Now why don't you go and pack and get the fuck out of my life?" I spat, anger simmering just below the surface. "And since you're the one who wants to leave, you need to get out of this house as soon as possible." "I'm not going anywhere. No way am I moving out, just so you can move your lover in." I abruptly stood up, pouring my coffee into a travel mug and topping it off with one last splash as I headed for the door. It was time to leave for work before things got even more heated. On my way to work, I made a detour to the bank where I swiftly closed out our joint savings and checking accounts, as well as retrieving the contents from our safe deposit box. With determination in my steps, I then headed to a different bank, closer to my workplace, where I opened new accounts solely under my name. As I arrived at work, I immediately got to work on cancelling all of our joint credit cards and arranging for new ones in my name only. With that major task out of the way, I finally focused on my daily workload. After a long day at work, I decided to treat myself to dinner and drinks with my executive assistant, Stella. As we caught up and chatted about work and personal life, I couldn't help but mention that I was back on the market. Stella laughed and replied with unexpected eagerness, "To hell with my sister. If you're single again, I want to be first in line. I had originally hired Stella as a secretary 10 years ago, but she had proven herself to be an invaluable asset. So much so that 4 years ago, I promoted her to my personal assistant, and even further 2 years later, when she became my executive assistant. It wasn't until a backyard barbecue that I hosted on Sunday 2 years prior that things took a turn. Stella's sister Tara happened to be visiting the town at the time, and after inviting them both to join me for the event, Stella had confessed that her sister found me attractive. Shocked but flattered, I had reminded Stella not to let my wife Beatrice find out about any of this because she could get insanely jealous. And now, here was Stella boldly expressing her interest. It never once crossed my mind that she might have harbored such feelings towards me all these years. I chuckled. Okay then, Tara moves to second place and you can have the top spot. My boss's face turned serious. I'm not joking here, boss. I'm serious as hell. I want a shot. Sensing his determination, I listened intently. You might not when you hear what I have to offer. His eyebrows furrowed in curiosity. And what is that? Bea told me that she wanted a divorce, so I'm leaving it up to her and her lover to make it happen, and I have no idea what their timetable might be. My mouth dropped open in shock. Her lover. Yeah, she hooked up with a guy about a year and a half ago, and I guess she finally decided that a couple of days a week with him weren't enough, so she's going full-time. How long have you known? A year and a half. I've known almost since the day it started. My mind raced with questions. How could you know that? She was seen by a friend of mine going into a motel room with a man, and she gave me a call. I put a private detective on Bea for a week, and he got me all that I needed to know. My disbelief turned into anger. A year and a half, and you did nothing about it. What was there to do? Get all confrontational about it and turn my life upside down? This state is no fault. Everything would have to be split 50 by 50, and I would have had to sell the house and split the proceeds with her. I would have had to give up the pool, the hot tub, my woodworking shop, and my 3-car garage, and move into an apartment somewhere. No, thank you. I decided to just ignore it and let her cook for me, do my laundry, and clean the house. My boss's voice dripped with resignation and bitterness. The accusation hung heavy between them like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over their conversation. How could you stand being around her knowing that she was cheating on you? The words were sharp and laced with disbelief. You would be surprised at how quickly love can turn into hate, and then hate turn into indifference. His voice was bitter and resigned, as if he had accepted this painful truth long ago. I can't believe that a healthy guy like you could go a year and a half without sex. Her voice held a mix of curiosity and concern. I didn't go without. As long as Bea still offered, I still took, but the frequency did drop some. I wouldn't touch her on the days I knew that she had been with him. He trailed off, his jaw clenching at the thought. You have any idea of why she did it? She asked, her eyes searching his face for any signs of understanding. Not a clue, but he probably wasn't the first one. His tone was bitter and filled with resentment. You think she has had other lovers? She couldn't hide the shock in her voice. I have no way of knowing for sure, but what I do know is that in the 10 years we have been married, she has gone into a certain sort of mood 4 times that I can remember. 4 times that she has behaved like she has behaved since she took up with the guy she is seeing now. His words dripped with disdain. It is only a guess on my part, but I'd almost bet that the other times were for the same reason. If she hadn't been seen and I hadn't been alerted to what was going on, I would have taken the recent mood as just another one of those female things. He shook his head, his expression pained. I may be all wrong in my thinking, but it really doesn't matter. His voice grew cold and distant. I know about the one, and that is all I need to know about to know that she is a cheating bitch. The final words were spat out with venom, revealing the depth of his hurt and betrayal. The tension in the room was palpable as Rob and his friend, whose name was not mentioned, discussed the current situation. "What are you going to do now?" Rob's friend asked, concern etched across his face. "Wait," Rob replied with a determined expression. "Wait for what?" "To see what she is going to do," Rob explained. "She's on her own now. I've cleaned out the bank accounts, cancelled all of her credit cards, and told her to get out of the house." Rob's friend raised an eyebrow in surprise. "She wanted a divorce?" "Yeah," Rob said bitterly, "so I'm leaving it to her to get it. Since she doesn't make enough to support herself and still be able to pay an attorney, she'll have to get the money from her lover, but I don't know if he'll give it to her. They could have talked it over before she hit me with it, but I have no way of knowing. What I'm saying here is that if you're really interested, you'll be running around with a married man who has no idea how long it will be before he's divorced," Rob's friend warned. "You're not thinking too clearly here, Rob," he continued. "How so?" Rob asked defensively. "If she goes for the divorce, she's in control. You'll get served and it could be bad." "You have no idea what she might do," his friend explained earnestly. "You could be ordered to vacate the house and maintain her pending hearings." "And what if she files for mental and physical cruelty and gets a restraining order keeping you away from her and the house?" "You need to be the one setting the pace here, boss. You need to be in the driver's seat. Make her respond to you, not the other way around. Besides," his friend added with a sly smile, "you filing for divorce helps me." "Helps you how?" Rob asked, confused. "If you're going to wait and let her file, what if she doesn't? What if Loverboy won't give her the money to do it? That would put us in the position of committing adultery, and she could use that against you somewhere down the line," his friend explained. "You say she cheated and she says, 'So what? You did too.' But if you file for divorce, you're saying that, as far as you're concerned, the marriage is over, and what you do from that point on is none of her business. From a strictly legal point of view, you'll still be married until the divorce is final, and taking up with me would technically be adultery. But no court would use it against you as long as it was something that didn't start before you separated from Bia. So, from where I sit," his friend concluded, "I need to stay away from you until either you or B get the legal ball rolling. If we wait on her, it could take years or it could happen next week, but with her controlling things. But if you do it, we could potentially have this all settled by this weekend. If you can get in to see an attorney early tomorrow, you could conceivably have Bia served by Thursday, and that would give me the weekend to work on hooking you." "Hooking me?" Rob repeated incredulously. "Damned straight, boss man," his friend grinned. "What good does it do to be first on the list if you don't take advantage of it?" My insides churned as I conceded Bia's point. With a heavy sigh, I retrieved my cell phone from my pocket and tapped Josh's number on speed dial. We had been friends since 3rd grade, and now he was an attorney specializing in family law, a fancy term for divorce law. The line clicked, and Josh's crisp voice answered. I wasted no time explaining the situation to him. I could hear the surprise in his tone as I told him about Bia, leaving and needing his legal services. I knew he and his wife Sally were friends with us, but this was business. He promised to take care of it first thing in the morning when he got into his office, then invited me to stop by around lunchtime to sign the papers and grab a bite to eat. But before hanging up, I added one more request for a restraining order against B. It may have been petty, but I couldn't resist getting back at her for leaving me. I fabricated a story about her threatening me with her lover, Tom Noble, if I didn't let her go peacefully. Josh saw through my lie, but agreed to file the order anyway with a chuckle. As we said our goodbyes, I couldn't help feeling a sense of satisfaction at gaining some control over this messy situation. Do you understand that a hearing will be scheduled within the next 10 days regarding the order? The lawyer's voice was stern, but professional, as he looked over the paperwork on his desk. I can have it served, but first there must be a hearing before a judge will deem it valid. I am aware, replied the client, his voice heavy with determination. But right now, the most important thing is to get her out of the house and keep her away for a while. We have no children, so there is no pressing reason for her to have use of the house during the divorce process. I'm going with the possession is 9/10 of the law approach here. I see no reason for the judge to order me out and allow her in. I told her to leave when we spoke this morning, but I don't know what I'll find when I go home. She may have left, or she may still be there. He rubbed his forehead wearily. I just hope she's gone. If not, plan on serving her at her workplace. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Is there any chance of reconciliation between you two? The client let out a humorless laugh, not a prayer. All right, sighed the lawyer, closing the file. I'll see you tomorrow then. The tense atmosphere in the room seemed to linger even after they had both left. As the call disconnected, I turned to Stella across the table and asked with anticipation, "What do you have in store for me this weekend?" Her ideas sounded intriguing, and I couldn't wait to see what she had planned. When I arrived home, Bia was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers in disarray. I grabbed a beer from the icebox and asked, "Why are you still here?" She looked up at me with a fire in her eyes and replied coolly, "It's still my house too. I'll stay until I find another place, and if you don't want me around, feel free to leave." "And let you move your lover in? Not on your life." Her words stung like a slap, but I refused to back down. "You need to sit down so we can discuss our next steps," she insisted. But I shook my head stubbornly and retorted, "No, we aren't going to do anything. You told me you wanted a divorce, so it's on you to make it happen. You get the lawyer, file the paperwork, and pay all the fees. And as for splitting our assets, I'll fight you every step of the way. We live in a no-fault state, so everything gets divided equally, and trust me, I'll drag out this process just to make sure your lawyer bills keep piling up." My voice grew louder with each word, anger fueling my resolve. "You want the coffee table? Well, guess what? So do I. And that sofa. Sorry, Bia, but it holds too much sentimental value for me to give up without a fight." Bia's expression softened slightly as she asked, "Why does any of this matter to you? You didn't even seem upset when I told you I wanted a divorce. All you said was pack your bags and go." "That was before I had time to truly think about it," I replied honestly. With a deep breath, I met her gaze and took a chance. "I let you slide the first 3 times because you always came back. I loved you enough to keep quiet and forgive you because I believed in us." Her eyes flickered away from mine when I mentioned the first 3 times, confirming my suspicions. I continued, my voice growing harder. "I don't know why I put up with it, but I did. Maybe I thought I had done something to anger you, or maybe I was just so desperate for your love that I was willing to overlook your infidelity. But when you ended things with Noble, I naively thought it was because you finally realized how much you truly loved me and wanted to make things right. I couldn't even look at her anymore, as the flood of realization hit me like a wave. The bullshit was already seeping into my shoes. But now, looking back, I see that this is just who you are. A low-life, cheating slut who will never be satisfied with one person. If it wasn't Noble, it would have been someone else 6 months or a year down the road. My fists clenched at my sides as anger consumed me. And after thinking about it, I decided that I needed some sort of revenge. Part of me wants to grab a thick belt and beat your ass until it breaks the skin and leaves you bleeding on the floor, but that would only land me in jail." My lips twisted into a bitter smile. "So instead, the only way I can hurt you is through the divorce. And believe me, I plan on making it as difficult and costly for you as possible." She nodded silently, knowing she deserved every bit of my wrath. "This may be our house, but if you choose to stay here, know that I will not make it easy for you. Move your belongings into one of the spare bedrooms and stay the hell out of my way." My voice was cold and unyielding, filled with all the hurt and betrayal that I had been holding back for too long. The last of the cold beer slid down my throat, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste. I trudged up the creaky stairs to what had been our bedroom, now just an empty space filled with memories and regrets. As I got ready for bed, my mind raced with conflicting emotions. Had I accomplished what I set out to do? Had I given her enough to think about? Would she finally talk things over with Noel and make the necessary decisions? But these things take time, and in that time, Josh could swoop in and serve BA with divorce papers and a restraining order. My heart pounded as I tried to keep calm, not knowing what moves were being made behind the scenes. I couldn't shake off the feeling that perhaps I was wrong. Maybe Bia had already consulted a lawyer and was taking action against me. But when I checked the balances on our cancelled credit cards and withdrew cash from the bank, everything seemed to be in line with what I expected. If she had seen a lawyer, she certainly hadn't used our shared funds to pay them. But then again, maybe Noble was footing the bill. As I left the house before Bia could emerge from whichever spare bedroom she had chosen to occupy, my mind was whirring with plans. I stopped at the cafe for breakfast, sipping my coffee as I mentally listed all the people I needed to call as soon as Bia was served. There was no way I would let her control the narrative of our divorce. I would tell everyone the truth about why our marriage had ended and why it was necessary for us to part ways. As I sat at my desk, Stella's words echoed in my mind. She had been so excited for the upcoming weekend, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of hope that it would bring something positive into her life. During lunch, Josh met me at the restaurant and slid some papers across the table. I quickly signed them, eager to move forward with our plan. "I'll head to the city-county building after lunch to file," he said. "Are you sure you still want her served at work?" I asked. "Damned straight I do," Josh replied confidently. "Let's aim for tomorrow around 10 then." "Perfect. Call me as soon as it's done. I want the locks on the house changed before she can even get home," he instructed. After returning to work, I made arrangements to take the next day off. Before leaving the office, I called up a locksmith and scheduled some quick service for the following day. It cost me a bit extra, but I was willing to pay any price to ensure everything went smoothly. As I pulled into the driveway, Bia's car sat idle next to mine. I knew she was home, but the thick silence told me that she was avoiding me. Without a word, I grabbed my bag and headed inside, ready to get out of the tension-filled atmosphere. It wasn't until later that morning when I decided to go for breakfast that I realized I hadn't seen or heard from B. Angie, the owner of the BUB, noticed her absence as well. "You're usually inseparable. What happened?" she asked curiously while taking my order. "We've decided to go our separate ways," I replied with a heavy sigh. Angie's expression turned to sympathy as she set down my bill and added, "My phone number is on the back, not the restaurant number, my personal number." I couldn't help but laugh internally at the pitying look she gave me before walking away. She was just one of many women who had shown interest in me these past few days, but why couldn't my own wife see my worth? The question lingered in my mind as I sipped coffee and read the morning paper. When it came time for Bia to leave for work, I headed back home and started packing her belongings, moving them out to the garage. At 10:15 a.m., Josh called me to let me know that the divorce papers had been officially served. With a deep breath, I called the locksmith, and within 20 minutes, he arrived at the house and began changing all the locks. As if on cue, Bia came speeding into the driveway, unable to ignore the wide-open garage door and the large cardboard sign proclaiming all your things are here in the garage, B. She stood frozen, her gaze fixated on the sign in front of the house. Time seemed to slow down as she processed the words written in bold black letters. With a determined look on her face, she attempted to unlock the door with her keys, but they wouldn't budge. Frustrated, she pressed the doorbell repeatedly, hoping someone would answer, but there was no response. After a few minutes of waiting, she gave up and left, her mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. In the garage, she saw that 2 bags of her belongings were already packed and ready to go, evidence that he had been planning this for some time. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, his phone rang. It was B. "Hello?" "You asshole! Did you have to embarrass me like that in front of my coworkers?" "Better than letting you humiliate me in front of mine." "You're the one who told me to file for divorce, and what's with this restraining order?" "I was scared you would send Noble over to beat me up for standing up to you." "That's ridiculous and you know it. I need to get my things from the house." "All of your stuff is in the garage, Bia. I haven't changed the code so your opener will still work. If you need anything else, just make a list and I'll move it out there for you." "Don't play games, Rob. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "Sorry, Bia. Causing some inconvenience is nothing compared to the years of pain you've caused me. Be grateful I didn't react violently. Goodbye." His voice was cold and final as he hung up the phone, feeling a sense of liberation wash over him as he stood his ground against her manipulations and lies. As soon as I hung up with Bia, my fingers were already dialing the numbers on my list. Each call felt like a burden, a weight of betrayal and disappointment that had been thrust upon me. Some answered with shock in their voice, unable to believe that sweet innocent B could have cheated on me. But 2 voices held different tones, one with a sly sense of satisfaction as if they had always known something was off about her, and the other with a hint of accusation as if it had somehow been my fault for not speaking up sooner. Those conversations were quick and easy, almost like ripping off a band-aid. But there were 2 names on my list that I dreaded calling the most: BA's parents. They had always welcomed me into their home with open arms, treating me like the son they never had. But now I couldn't bear to face them and tell them what their daughter had done. They would surely defend her and try to make excuses for her actions. But I couldn't let Bia control the narrative and paint me as the villain in this story. I needed to stand up for myself and make sure her true colors were shown. It pained me to think that her own parents might turn against me, but I couldn't let that stop me from speaking my truth. After making all the necessary phone calls, I made one last sweep through the house in search of any belongings that belonged to BA. As I finished up my lunch, there was a knock at the door. It was the guys from Apex Security, here to install the new system I had ordered. Despite having a restraining order against her, I didn't trust Bia to stay away, and I wanted to make sure the house was secure with cameras in case she tried anything. Once the security system was set up, I debated between working on my current project, a bookshelf for my woodworking shop, or continuing my restoration work on a sleek 1934 Ford 3-window coupe in the garage. The car won out, and I got lost in my work. At work on Thursday, I informed Stella that everything was ready for our weekend plans. She beamed and asked, "Tomorrow night then? Dinner and dancing?" I grinned back at her, for starters. A wide grin spread across my face as I stepped through the front door of my home. My instincts had been right. Bia had done exactly what I expected her to do. She must have used her garage door opener to gain access, and then forcibly entered through the connecting door from the garage. The once pristine kitchen was now a mess, with broken dishes and shattered glasses scattered across the floor. As I made my way into the living room, I couldn't help but let out a chuckle at the sight before me. Several lamps lay in pieces on the ground, evidence of Bia's destructive rampage. But the real cherry on top was when I reviewed the footage from my security cameras. There it was, plain as day. Bia had taken all of my clothes out of the closet, thrown them onto the floor, and then squatted over them, urinating in a fit of rage. As grotesque as it was, I couldn't help but smile, knowing that this act of malice would be used against her in court. It was clear evidence that she had not only violated the restraining order, but had also intentionally destroyed my personal property. Without hesitation, I called Josh and he immediately contacted the police. They arrived promptly and took statements and photographs of the damage. The following day, Bia was arrested at her workplace and brought to jail. After being fingerprinted and photographed, she was swiftly brought before a judge. She faced charges of violating the restraining order and willful destruction of private property. The judge set a hearing date and surprisingly released Bia on her own recognizance, an unexpected turn of events, but one that played into our favor. The date with Stella was a whirlwind of excitement and laughter, and we immediately made plans for a second date on Saturday, and as expected, it was just as wonderful as the first. On Sunday, we decided to have a romantic picnic in the park, surrounded by blooming flowers and the gentle babble of a nearby stream. But while our weekend was filled with joy and love, Monday brought a different story. The hearing for the restraining order against B took place, and when the judge saw the evidence from my security system, he not only made the order permanent, but also ordered B to replace all of the destroyed items, pay for my dry cleaning bill, and clean the bedroom where her urine had seeped into the carpet. She had 10 days to complete these tasks or face jail time for contempt of court. Feeling vindictive, I purposely hired the most expensive cleaning company available to carry out the work. But to my disappointment, Bia actually managed to come up with the money to fulfill the judge's orders. I couldn't help but feel let down. Part of me was hoping she would be punished for her actions. The following 2 weeks glided by, filled with frequent dates and occasional kissing that left us both breathless. Yet, there was always a lingering discomfort between us due to my status as a married man. We both knew we were approaching a point where things would become serious. Bia didn't put up a fight in the divorce proceedings, and after 6 months, it was finalized. The standard no-fault agreement split everything evenly between us, including the house which I refinanced and bought out her share. I came out on top in the deal, having saved money separately for years towards a surprise around the world trip planned for our 20th anniversary. Since she was unaware of this plan, I didn't give her a cent from that account. Additionally, I had secretly purchased 2 certificates of deposit with my last 2 bonus checks and kept them in a safe deposit box without her knowledge. Amidst all of this, there was one small victory for me. Bia was granted alimony for only 2 years or until she remarried, but it was set at a mere $100 per week instead of the $500 she had been aiming for. My lawyer, Josh, explained to me that we had gotten lucky with the judges assigned to my case. It just so happened that they were cousins who discussed the cases with each other and both had experience with cheating wives in their pasts. As a result, they believed that the innocent husband should not be punished for his wife's infidelity and followed the law accordingly without going beyond its parameters. Despite the finality of their divorce, it seemed that Noble was not a significant presence in Bia's life, as she had moved back in with her parents after only 7 months. I sat at the bar of the elegant Hilton Hotel, enjoying a cold beer and a savory steak sandwich for lunch. Suddenly, someone took the seat next to me and asked if they could buy me a drink. When I turned to see who it was, I was surprised to find my ex-wife's former lover sitting there. "Mind if we have a little chat?" he asked. Intrigued, I agreed, and he motioned for Agnes, the bartender, to bring us both beers. As she set them down on the counter, he took a long swig from his bottle before setting it down and absent-mindedly peeling off the label. With his eyes fixed on the growing pile of paper in front of him, he spoke again. "I never meant to hurt you," he said remorsefully. Continuing to fiddle with the label, he explained, "She wasn't wearing her wedding rings when I met her that night. I had no idea she was married, and she certainly didn't act like it. She was out with a group of her co-workers at Bud's Bar, and I asked her to dance. I bought her a drink, and she invited me to sit with her and the other girls, their laughter filling the air. As we danced together, her movements were fluid and graceful, her smile bright like a beacon in the dimly lit bar. I asked her for a date and she said yes, her eyes sparkling with excitement. In just a few short weeks, our passion grew and we couldn't resist each other. We would sneak away whenever we could, finding solace in dingy motel rooms, but as our love deepened, I knew I wanted more. I found my own apartment so we wouldn't have to hide anymore. However, before I could propose marriage, a friend warned me that Bia was cheating on me. At first, I didn't believe it, but then I received your letter confirming the news. My heart sank as I read about how she had been unfaithful before with your brother. I confronted her, feeling numb and betrayed, and as she broke down crying, she revealed the truth behind her actions. She never loved you. Instead, she feared you. You were an abusive drunk who beat and emotionally abused her. Her fear of leaving you was rooted in your threats to hunt her down and harm anyone she ever loved. My heart ached for both of us, realizing that our relationship was built on lies and deceit. Our love story had ended before it even began. As I delved deeper into her lies, my hopes of marrying her dwindled. But she was skilled in the bedroom, and with nowhere else to go after you kicked her out, I let her move in with me. As long as she fulfilled her end of our arrangement, everything was fine. However, when our divorce was finalized and she started discussing marriage, I shut her down immediately. Growing up, my parents' marriage fell apart due to my mother's infidelity. She ultimately cheated on my father again, in a second and third marriages as well. With that experience ingrained in me, I firmly believed that a cheater would always be a cheater. And so, I told Bia this when setting our boundaries. We could only be friends with benefits, living together, nothing more. Yet, despite my clear stance, she disappeared 3 weeks later. Taking another swig of his beer, he continued, "I heard rumors that you were aware of our affair all along. Why did you tolerate it and not file for divorce?" As he took another pull of his beer, the man's words hung heavy in the tense air between us. "You said it yourself," he finally spoke, his voice gruff with emotion. "She was damned good pussy." I could feel my own face grow hot with anger as he continued to explain how he had taken her for granted, thinking only of himself and his own needs. But now, without her in his bed, he realized just how much he missed her. With a heavy sigh, the man finished off his beer and stood up abruptly, reaching into his pocket and setting something on the bar before sliding it over to me. I couldn't help but ask what it was. "That lottery ticket you gave me. It was a winner." "That's your half," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "I waited until now to give it to you so you wouldn't have to give her half in the divorce." My heart raced as I picked up the object and examined it. It was a cashier's check for a large amount. A very, very large amount. As I made my way back to the office, my personnel assistant, John, commented on my demeanor, asking if lunch had been that good. But as I sat at my desk, staring at the check in front of me, I couldn't help but think about Stella. Not just as an employee or a cook and cleaner, but as the woman who was now painting the nursery for our twins at home